Hi everyone, I'm Ed Baxter, the host of the Jacuzzi Podcast. Throughout the podcast, we've been incredibly fortunate to have some amazing guests on, and we've covered some really insightful conversations. We wanted to pull out some of the best bits focused on specific topics that you can enjoy alongside the full episodes. We hope you enjoy these Jacuzzi Podcast Topics. We all need time to relax, wind down, and take a moment from the world. It feels like life is getting busier and busier, and sometimes it can be a lot to deal with. This Jacuzzi Podcast Topics, we're going to be jumping into wellbeing. We've spoken to some amazing guests and they've all had a very different perspective of wellbeing. So I hope you enjoy these best bits and hear from all our different amazing guests. When I sat down with Andrea McLean, we had a great conversation around wellbeing. One of the really big phrases she focused on was about knowing when enough was enough. We talked about how some of the most inspirational people that we all look up to often take the least care of their wellbeing. And then one of the things that she's most passionate about is how we should all be more confident in ourselves and the decisions that we choose to make. Let's jump into this clip and see what Andrea had to say.
One, people are very ashamed about admitting this because they see it as a sign of weakness. And two, people get to a point where they know they're unhappy, they know they're stressed, but they don't know how to stop. Yeah. Because whilst on one hand they're achieving all the things that society's told them is great, it's not feeling great. So then they're thinking, I must be doing it wrong. Yeah. And actually before your body lets you know and you end up getting physically ill, and before your mind lets you know and you start experiencing anxiety and panic attacks and dark thoughts and depression and all of these things that are really signals that you are not in balance, things are not going as they should be. Recognize that it's starting to happen and sit down and really ask yourself some really honest questions. And this goes back to what we're talking about, coaching. Yeah. That can really help you keep on an even keel. And then ask yourself, am I still enjoying what I'm doing? Okay, if I'm enjoying parts of it, how can I make it that I'm still doing those parts? But how can I gradually remove the bits that I'm not finding so great? Now, there might be people listening to this who'll think, I'm not a big superstar or an athlete or a Hollywood actor or whatever. How does this relate to me? But it still can, even if you're just doing a job just to pay the bills and you don't necessarily enjoy it and it's making you very stressed. Have a word with someone who you're working with, whether you've got an HR manager, and explain how you feel and ask if there's maybe a sideways step that you can make so that your pay level stays the same, so you're not suffering in that way, but maybe you're moving into a different area that you enjoy. Or if you can't do that, is there a hobby that you can form a group of people at work with that you can all do together? Yeah. It can maybe mean once a week after work you all meet up and talk about this, or it's a movie club or a book club or whatever club. And then suddenly you've got things that you're meeting and chatting about people at work with that isn't to do with work, that is something that you find really enjoyable. So technically nothing's changed. You're still doing a job you don't necessarily enjoy to bring the money in, but the experience of it has changed. That in itself can sometimes be enough just to keep you going.
Yeah, I think that's what's, I think like you mentioned there, a lot of people would say,
it's all right for you.
Yeah, it's all right for you, it doesn't make sense. But I think, could you tell us a little, you described it as a breakdown. Could you go into a little bit more detail about that?
Well, I ignored every single sign that my mind and body was telling me that you need to stop, this isn't working for you, and it was like I was on a runaway horse. So what was it like for me? Mentally, my brain was whirring 100 miles an hour, just whirring. I had so much. I was saying yes to every single job that came in because I needed the money to make my side business work, which was This Girl's on Fire. But also, especially in sort of my business at the time, if people ask you to do things, you say yes because you may never get the opportunity again. And so there's fear. So I realized I was actually operating 100% from a place of fear. Yeah. Fear of letting down the team that I had built and was paying to have this side hustle, if you like, is what it's called. But also this fear that I may never get these opportunities again. Yeah. And fear is a horrible motivator, but it's actually what propels us 90% of the time.
So fear of failure often as well, isn't it? If you really push on and think, oh, well, I don't want to fail, so I'm going to keep pushing and pushing.
Fear of embarrassment. Yeah. What if this doesn't work and everyone laughs at me? well, I say to that now, because actually the people who would laugh at you, they'd laugh at you anyway.
Yeah.
They will sneer at you even if it goes really well and you become a multi-billionaire. They'll think that, well, you know, you've clearly done something, or, you know, it's all right for you. So don't even pay any attention to them. But you don't know that when you're in that mind space. Yeah. So, and then I started getting very low, very depressed, very anxious. And I was taking anti-anxiety medication, beta blockers, which just to slow the heart rate down, because my heart was just pounding all the time. And physically, I was pushing myself harder than I ever have. I was getting up at 5:30 in the morning, hitting the gym. I was working out harder than I ever had done, because I thought, strong mind, strong body, I can do this. I was in the gym before my colleagues were awake. It was too much. I tried to do too much. And in the end, a friend called me out and said, "You're not right." And I started crying, couldn't stop, went home and made changes.
That was great hearing Andrea's perspective on wellbeing. I also had the opportunity to sit down with Peter Andre from a very similar industry, TV and show business. He talked about how being physically active is not only great for your physical well-being, but also your mental well-being. He really focused on how being physically active helps his decision making, which is very similar to what Andrew was saying. Let's jump in and see what he had to say.
But yeah, the only thing I recommend to people is, instead of worrying about everything you eat all the time, just somehow keep active, because I tell you what, it's good for your body, your brain. And plus, I always say to people, they say, yeah, but surely you need to eat well as well. And I'm like, well, yeah, I do a lot of the times. Like in the day, I'm pretty good with what I eat. I have protein pots and that, but at night, I'll eat anything. I don't care. And they said, but, you know, surely it defeats the purpose of training. And I said, no, because training, what it does is, over time, any form of exercise, over time, you end up making, a lot of the times, better choices in food.
Oh yeah. 100%.
So for example, if you just did a workout and someone said, let's go to McDonald's, you'd be like, nah, man, I'm going to have a protein shake, or I'm going to have this.
Yeah.
But then later on in the night, you might go to Macca's, right? But if you weren't training and someone said at lunchtime, let's go to Macca's, you'd be like, hell yeah, I'm going to go to Macca's. So what I'm saying is that it doesn't mean you stop eating all the stuff you love, but you just end up sort of having it less.
Yeah. 100%.
Instead of having it twice a day, you might have it once a day, or... Do you know what I mean? It's just, you just end up making slightly better choices, and so training for me is key.
So have you guys, as I've seen a little bit of you kind of doing it with the kids, getting active with the kids, because obviously, like you say now, your passion for fitness and keeping active, is that you kind of dragged them along, or did they want to jump on the bandwagon as such?
Well, Junior's obsessed with football, and he's 15 and he loves football, so he loves fitness. My other kids, I think they just saw that Dad's doing it and they're like, they should join in, and they love it. And I think, again, it's just me trying to get the kids active, because, again, I think there's so much focus on what kids should eat and shouldn't eat. Too much. When we were kids, our parents didn't say, no, you can't have a donut, no, you can't have pudding, no, you can't have that. They would be like, you go outside, play in the garden, and when we're ready for dinner, we'll call you in. And you're out there playing for hours.
Yeah.
So you're burning so many calories without realizing it. And then when you eat, you're not worried about, are my kids eating, you know, you do worry. You don't want them to eat bags of sweets all day, every day, but you're less worried about what they eat because they're keeping active. And generally they're not inside eating sweets all day because they're outside playing.
Quick one, if you enjoy listening to and watching the Jacuzzi Podcast Topics, want to learn more about the wellbeing products that Jacuzzi develop, or want to learn more about the products our guests may have themselves, you can discover everything at jacuzzi.com. Now, back to the episode. We've heard from two great guests there, both from a similar industry, on how they prioritise their well-being, both physically and mentally. Now, from TV and showbiz over to athletes. When I sat down with Joe Fraser, we talked about how he actually hadn't prioritised his well-being over performance. As an athlete, this isn't very rare. You'll often prioritise progression and performance over your own well-being. He told us about when he came back from the Tokyo Olympics was probably the first time he's ever prioritised his own well-being over performance. Let's jump into this clip and see what he had to say.
We came back and it was the games were still going on.
Yeah, you couldn't stay there and enjoy the experience, kind of thing.
Yeah, so I was finding it quite strange, because I don't know, I keep saying it, but you work your whole life And then it's like, have I actually done the Olympics? I didn't really understand that I had.
Yeah.
And I found it weird to process that I was an Olympian now.
Yeah.
Because I still wanted to be an Olympian.
I
couldn't quite understand that I'd gone.
Yeah.
So I found that a bit up and down. Like some days I'd feel amazing, some days I'd be a bit down.
Do you think if you'd come back with the result you'd wanted, do you think that would have made it an easier experience with the come down, or do you think it would have been even harder because you were like, you'd gone such a big high to then come back down again?
Yeah, I don't think it would have made it any easier, to be honest. And it's weird because I find it hard to actually explain what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I definitely found myself going like up and down with emotions and stuff and mentality.
So would you say this is the first time post-Olympics that you're like, right, I need a rest? Is this the first time you've ever been in that place where you're like you said, like you need a rest? Is this the first time you've experienced that?
Definitely,
really?
Definitely. I also love watching the sport, and I found it hard to watch the competitions back. Yeah. Not because of results, but just, I don't know, I just found it hard to watch them back, and I found it so strange because I love gymnastics. It's my favourite sport, of course, but. So
now, you're like a month after it, are you hungry now again?
Definitely. And like I say, having these guys training for the World Championships, it makes me want to be part of that team again and give my all for them. And
so recovering from the shoulder up, we talked about it before we actually started filming, but you knew you had this injury, like you said, just before the World Championships in 2019. You persevered with an injury for pretty much 2 years, like you said, injections to just kind of subdue the pain.
Yeah.
What's that experience been like? Because I don't know anyone else who's kind of done that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it was a challenge for sure. Yeah. Timings of, injections and things, and making sure that everything was safe.
That was great to hear from Joe. Now from gymnastics and the Olympics, over to the swimming pool and Paralympics. When I sat down with Jessica Jane Applegate, she talked about how she'd actually prioritised her own mental health and well-being through the lockdown period over the ideal training environment. And thanks to Jacuzzi, she built her own training facility at home with the Jacuzzi Swim Spa. And it was great seeing, based off her own results in Tokyo, where she was crowned Paralympic champion again, that prioritising her own well-being probably had a performance increase in the end. Let's jump into this clip and see what Jessica had to say.
Basically, I love where I live. Yeah. And I have 3 dogs. And if I was to up and move, my dogs would either have to come with me or my mum would have to quit her job. But mental health wise, I didn't see it being very good for my mental health to just up and move and live in a hotel room for the foreseeable future. Because it was going to be really strict. You wasn't going to be allowed to leave the hotel room for other than swimming. Whereas here, I could go for walks, I could take my dogs out for a walk, I could go for bike rides. And I just really enjoy where I live, and I thought I'd rather be happy and healthy than stressed.
Go with the swimming pool.
Yeah.
So did you struggle with, say, your mental health, or did you find it really hard not having access to a normal swimming pool?
Yeah, I found it hard because a lot of people posting on social media, I've just done the final session of the week on Saturday, and I was like, I would absolutely love to be in a swimming pool right now, and I found it hard. But I think it probably made me mentally tougher because I was like, right, I'm going to go out and have a really good bike session. I'm going to go get in the swim spa and just do my thing. And at the end of the day, I would just wanted to be happy and enjoy what I was doing rather than think about all the pressures of everything else that everyone else will be feeling.
I guess that's a great perspective to have in terms of you're not just kind of, obviously a lot of people struggle through lockdowns with mental health and stuff, but you found that you almost accepted that and then turned it around into a positive in terms of how much better it's going to make you as an athlete and how much more, I guess, made you 10 times more determined, I guess, to succeed at Tokyo, knowing the struggle it's had to be.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really lucky I've got a really good support network. Like, my coach was on furlough and obviously he wasn't coaching, but I would ring him up monthly and be crying on the phone to him, I just want to swim and stuff like that. And then obviously my mum bed most of it because I live with her. So it was really hard, but they really supported me for everything. And
how important do you think that support network is to succeeding as an athlete?
So important, because I feel like if you've got someone to talk to about your worries, then it's going to make it a lot easier. And my coach is really good. Like, he always backs what I say and will just go with it. But at the same time, he will tell me if I'm doing something wrong. So it was just great to have him just being like, you are making the right decisions. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Just concentrate on yourself. Like, if you need a day off, take a day off.
Yeah.
Like, don't stress too much about doing too much. If you're doing too much, it's going to make it worse.
That was great to hear from Jessica, and how when she prioritised her own mental well-being, she still got the performance she was looking for by being crowned Paralympic champion again. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this Jacuzzi Podcast Topics, where we focused on well-being. We've heard from some amazing different guests, all with very different perspectives. And remember, if you've enjoyed this, make sure to follow and subscribe to hear more topics just like this, and we'll catch you on the next one.